Hey everybody, today we're gonna make some fire cider. So it has started to cool off here. It's very clear that autumn is around the corner, the season is shifting, even the light is changing, and that clues me into the fact that it is time to start preparing this medicine. Fire cider needs about 4 weeks to sit and extract, and so if you think about it, like, when do you want it? You need to do it earlier than that. And so I like to have fire cider ready to go, usually by the beginning of October. It's nice as just a daily tonic to help support immune function, but also really we're giving ourselves like a boost of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, basically. So fire cider is an oxymel, which is an extraction that is half vinegar and half honey. And we use apple cider vinegar and raw honey. So ideally, you want local honey, local to your area. And the reason we're not using white vinegar is because it is distilled and it doesn't have the same benefits that apple cider vinegar has. So just alone, the apple cider vinegar and the raw honey have their own medicinal properties. Okay, so they already are going to have some antioxidant support. They're going to have different nutrients, and they're going to help support the body just on their own. And then what we're doing is we're extracting some of the compounds from simple kitchen produce, essentially, and herbs can be added in. We're extracting some of the properties of those into the vinegar. So since vinegar is partly acetic acid and partly water, what we're really pulling out is like water soluble constituents. And then what vinegar pulls out really well are vitamins and minerals. And so some of the water soluble constituents that we're going to get include your flavonoids, your antioxidants, your saponins, and some of the compounds in these contribute to a stronger and more robust immune response. In the traditional fire cider recipes, you'll see that it was really simple. It was basically like garlic, onion, horseradish, and ginger. And all of those things do have plenty of extraction happening when you put them in an oxymel. And then when you see more variated recipes and more modern recipes, there's so many more things added. And I personally love to just add a ton of herbs and foraged things, basically because I like the flavor of it. I want it to taste good. It is important to note that not everything will be properly extracted in vinegar. So I'm going to add turmeric, and many people do, but curcumin is not going to be pulled out in a vinegar extraction. You would need to make an alcohol-based tincture to really pull out the full properties. And then it's also fat soluble, so you would need to include some sort of fat or your body's not even going to be able to use it. So you might pull out a slight amount of antioxidants, but all those strong anti-inflammatories are not coming out in your fire cider. But you are getting the color and the taste of turmeric and whatever vitamins and minerals the turmeric root does have. That's also true for other like kitchen herbs, rosemary, your thymes, your sages. That I also like to add for the flavor is that you are pulling vitamins and minerals, but not necessarily pulling the strongest amount of antimicrobials. You get a little bit of the antimicrobial properties, but alcohol in general is much better at pulling out the volatile oils that contain the antimicrobials. So I just want you to know, like, let's not be confused about what we're doing. So what we are going to be ending up with at the end of the day is a daily vitamin and mineral tonic. It'll help support optimal health during seasonal transitions, and especially as we go into what people call sick season. And that's just really going to help give our bodies a little bit extra boost. And it can also help to soothe if we do have like seasonal allergies. It can help soothe mucous membranes, and it can help dry up postnasal drip and watery eyes and all those allergy symptoms. And even like the quercetin that is found in onions is going to be in there, which is an antihistamine. So we do get a good medicine. So really, when we're talking about a fire cider, it's important to know you don't have to have everything. You can use what you have. But I like to have some form of citrus, lemons, limes, oranges, always onion, garlic, and ginger, horseradish root if I can find it. And then from that, I kind of add everything else on as an extra. So when we're chopping this, let's not do the onion first because then I'll be crying the whole time. I do keep the peels on. These are organic, and so I'm not worried about pesticides, but the peels also have plenty of compounds in them that I don't necessarily want to just throw away. And so I'm going to keep the peels on, and I'm going to chop them into smaller pieces so that there's more surface area that will be exposed to the liquid menstruum. So I'm doing 1 lemon here. I'm doing a lime. I don't have an orange today, but if I did, I would do a whole orange, probably in addition to this. Now that's the other thing, is I don't always use like specific recipes. Although I do have a recipe card where I did create a recipe based on like the average of what I typically eyeball. So you can use that if you're more of a recipe person. And if you're not, then you also don't have to have specific ratios. You don't necessarily have to measure out or weigh out your items. So this is my ginger root. I'm again leaving the skin on. If this was not organic, I would probably peel it first because I don't want to extract pesticides into a medicinal preparation. I could not find horseradish root yesterday when I was out shopping for all this produce, and so this particular batch is going to leave it out, or if I find it in the next couple days, I might just add it a little late to the mix, which is perfectly fine. You can do that too. But if I did find it, I would be using a whole horseradish root. Now also with the garlic, I'm putting like half of a bulb in here, and I'm keeping on the peel, basically because, like I said, there are still compounds in there that are nutritive and medicinal, and there's no reason to have to take the time to peel it when it's perfectly fine not to. Okay, and then we're gonna do onion with the peel, like I said. So this is a very large onion. So if I'm doing a quart size jar, then I would only do half of this. And so I'm kind of feeling it out. Today I have a half-gallon mason jar over here, and I also have a quart jar. And so I think I'm just going to go ahead and do the half-gallon, and we can just use everything we have here. So, like I said, not precise. Just make sure you're exposing surface area. This is my turmeric root. Oxymels, or the honey and vinegar extractions, or some of the earliest medicine that we find, like especially in Greek records, and Greek physicians would be prescribing these combinations of honey and vinegar to treat many, many different things. And so it's just interesting, like how old of a remedy this is. The oxy meant the vinegar part, and the mel referred to the honey. So this is definitely an old remedy, but fire cider itself is a little bit newer to add the specific things that fire cider calls for. Now you can make oxymels of many things, really anything that would benefit from being extracted in vinegar. So anything where you really want minerals and vitamins and water-soluble compounds to pull out. And then the honey is nice because the honey is going to preserve it and make this whole thing shelf stable. That's really beneficial because it's hard to create shelf stable water extractions, right? Like teas, things like that are going to go bad really fast. So the honey is very helpful. And then the vinegar is helpful as well. It's really quite pretty to see the colors of everything. And you'll see when I'm going to add a few herbs that it just gets more and more visually appealing, I guess. Okay. So I have my half-gallon mason jar. And what I'm going to do is just start placing everything in here. No particular rhyme or reason, no particular order. We're just placing it all in. We want it loosely packed. Okay, so we want everything that we're putting in here to fill the jar at least half full. I typically aim more for like 3/4 to full, as you can see here. Now, let's see, I need to wipe this off. Now I'm gonna add some of the herbs that I really like to have in here. So I like to put at least a couple cinnamon sticks. That really helps enhance the flavor, and then some of the antimicrobial properties come out in the cinnamon. I also have here some rose hips, which are very high in vitamin C. So that's a really nice addition, because you know for sure that those are getting pulled out in the vinegar, and vitamin C is just most excellent during sick season. I'm going to add some dried stinging nettle, also one of the highest mineral content of any herb, so I want that extra mineral boost. And then because I don't have a fresh orange, I do here have some dried orange slices, and so I'm just going to add a few of those. Now, in the past, I've added like kitchen herbs and sometimes dried elderberry to this preparation. But today I'm opting out of that just because I'm going to focus more on what's actually getting extracted. And I'm going to do a separate oxymel with some of those kitchen herbs, and I will show you what I do with that in a different video. So now I want to fill this about half full of apple cider vinegar. This is homemade apple cider vinegar that I've made out of apple scraps, but you can use store-bought. That's perfectly fine, but it does need to be apple cider vinegar. And I'm going to fill it the remaining way with raw honey. Now, if you want yours less sweet, you can change those ratios, but you do need some honey just for the preservative properties. Okay, so now I'm going to add my honey. You might have to pause and give it time to kind of steep down in there and get through all of the layers. You can also kind of mix it up to help. But in the end, you're going to want your liquid to come all the way up to the lip of the jar. It's going to bubble as it's settling, which is good. Just helping it along a little bit. All right. So what you might end up having to do is, get it as full as you can right now, and then we'll put the lid on it, and then you might have to let it sit for several hours and then come back and top it off. What's really important is that we don't have air in this jar, because if we have air, then we can get mold, and we want to avoid that in our preparation. And so we're going to take a piece of wax paper, parchment paper, or even fabric, place that between the jar and the lid to prevent oxidation between the metal, and then we're going to seal that tight. And at this point, we can shake it up. Now, we're going to have to set this in a cool, dark place for about 4 weeks. Okay, and sometimes if you think about it, you're going to go back and shake it again after a few weeks, after a few days. And eventually, after 4 weeks, when all of this has extracted, then we'll be able to strain out all of this plant matter. And what is left after you strain is your fire cider. You can store that in a bottle or in a jar, and it is going to be shelf stable for at least a year or two, depending on the storage conditions and the water content. But you can dose that every day. So you can take it as a teaspoonful. It's a typical dose. Take a teaspoonful a day. But you could also add it into water. You can add it into salad dressings or marinades, glazes, but really to preserve everything, you don't want to heat it a lot. You want to just have it at room temperature if you're going for that vitamin, mineral, and immune boost. So this is our fire cider. And if you decide to make it, I hope you let me know.